I'm going to share my screen, and way I was planning to have this presentation was mainly divided in two parts. One is more describing what I'm doing, and the other one is more than describing what I'm learning through what I'm doing in terms of trends and so on. And so I would try to go pretty fast through the first one, so we have more time to actually dive into the learnings and explore them. But just to give you some background, my title is CEO of Future Food Americas. Future Food Americas is a branch of a bigger organization or groups of organizations, let's say, which is called Future Food. And here you see basically a little map that describe that. FFI basically has a knowledge part, which is a non-profit organization where we do educational programs and research all on the intersection of sustainable development goals, food and design. Then we have the community aspect where we basically we're building physical spaces where to actually get together and do some of these activities. And then the third one, which is the one I'm leading, is the one where we work with companies that are fascinated by everything we do in terms of research, education, community building, and so on, but they would like more help in a tangible way. Usually it's developing innovation pipelines focused on sustainability, and then executing them. So a lot of R&D research, work in the lab, recipe development, consumer research, and so on. We have a few spots worldwide between offices, labs, teams, remote teams, since now we're all in this remote work. And these are like the main topics that we usually tackle. And so we talk about food and these 6 main elements: food and environment, food production, food access, food nourishment. So a lot about health, lifestyle. Being originally Italian, especially from the Mediterranean context and diet, we think lifestyle is a key topic around the topic of food, and then awareness and education, of course. And this then can be also exploded in different formats. And I just like this because here we try to attach the different topics of food and food innovation to the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And I'm sure you know that, but it's a framework that has been more and more used by companies and organizations to see where they want to impact and where they would like to improve their impact. And so the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are, I would say, in our decks and in our projects with company every single day. And it's something to definitely keep in mind. I put a couple of slides here just to also give a little bit of context about why we decided to work with this structure. And this is not just about food, it's more about social entrepreneurship, but I think it's very important. We're not a standard organization. As you saw, there are many dots in that first slide. And so this is why, this is basically because we kept at the very bottom of everything we do, this triple bottom line concept of like people, planet, and profit. Maybe, no, yeah, this was the slide I was looking for. And in a framework, very classical framework where we define, where we go from like traditional charity to traditional businesses, and we can see all the different shades. We try to position ourselves into the first two areas, but with different kind of activities. So all our educational and research activity is actually done through standard non-profit organizations. So we work with universities, and I don't remember the name, but we spoke, it was like someone from the University of Zurich. And so we work with universities from there with that kind of entities, but also we work with companies, with B corporations, which are like normal C Corps, based in the US, but just they have the B Corp status. So we try really to expand from a charity level to a business level, and find the structure at the organizational level that allows us to actually get the maximum impact and flexibility as well, based on what we want to do. And so, yeah, you can see that through that, basically worldwide, I just saw this already. We have a little bit of everything from an incorporation in the US, a couple of LLC, even more in Europe. But then, for example, the physical spaces that I mentioned are, of course, LLC. The non-profit is, of course, a trust, and it's based in Europe. And so worldwide, you can also see a map of different kind of structure and organizations that we're using. And this is just like to give you a quick idea of the kind of companies and organizations we work with. When we talk about non-profit and research, it's mainly UN agencies and different kind of agencies. When we talk about research and education and also innovation, we partner with a huge network of design schools all over the world. So we can activate teams remotely in different parts of the world that already know a lot about designing innovation. And then, of course, we have corporate partners, which is the part that I'm working with, where basically companies coming to us to get some help on innovation pipeline development focused on sustainability. And so I'm going to go super quick through these parts, but the education, I basically already explained that. We have digital boot camps, we have in-presence courses, we have master and executive programs. We actually work with Franklin University in Switzerland, all on this topic. The goal is to educate more people on this specific topic, high school and so on. Community, I already mentioned that we have a few labs, different kind of settings. The biggest one is in Kyobashi, which is a central neighborhood in Tokyo. The smallest one is in Polica, which is this tiny town in south of Italy where historically Mediterranean diet was born. And so we're doing a lot of work there on integral ecological regeneration, Mediterranean diet, and so on. And then finally, we have innovation, which is the part that I guess is more interesting here, and that it's definitely more interesting for me. Different services here, and I think it's interesting because it's what usually companies are asking us for, from discovery, what's in the market, to sizing opportunities, ranking opportunities, finding new ideas and prototypes on those opportunity areas, and then developing them, do R&D research, and also help to launch them on the market with the go-to-market strategy and co-packers relationships as well. We mainly talk about CPG, so consumer packaged goods. Here, a few of you mentioned technology, processes, vertical farming. We touch all of this topic, but usually we don't touch them directly. So we rarely work with vertical farming companies, for example, and when we do is mainly because they need help in getting to the market with the products that they produce with their vertical farming facilities. And so the goal, the focus is very often CPG. What makes it different, and I think this is something that could be interesting for you in general, is prosperity thinking as an approach. We started with design thinking, and I'm sure everybody knows about it, having the user at the center, doing a ton of research on like the needs of the user. And then we have been doing research for the past couple of years on this new evolution of design thinking, which is called prosperity thinking. We just published an article about that, and prosperity thinking can also be very quickly and in a very simplistic way, even too much represented like this. So instead of studying an analysis from people only, you basically study analysis from planet as well. So when we are talking about any kind of issue, yes, we interview users and we do need finding on users to understand their needs and design solutions for them, but we also do a ton of research on planetary boundaries. We talk with scientists which are working on sustainability on this specific topic. We go very deep on that side in order to actually build an innovation framework, which is not given by the industry or the company's wishes in terms of business development and growth, but by what is feasible from a planetary perspective. And this, of course, usually cut in half at least the possibilities of innovation. And we think it's very important to keep the planet boundaries in mind from day one when we do innovation projects. And so these are like some of the things we do. We do in-depth global mapping We send companies cool concepts to try every week or every month from all over the world. Again, CPG mainly, we do scouting of future trends, a lot on the plant-based industry. The plant-based industry is, I didn't even put it in the trends after in the second part of the presentation because it's so, or like right now is already so much and everybody's talking about it, which I think we're basically past that already a little bit, but I'm of course very happy to talk about plant-based solutions, both from alternative of meat, dairy, and fish, which are coming from plants, or also which are produced in the lab, so cell-grown alternative. We do a lot of research and analysis. We found that companies really like to work together and design solutions together. So they like to outsource, but also they really want to be involved. And so we try to do a lot of workshop and research analysis directly with the companies in different kind of ways. We talk to users all over the world. We do change making dinners and different kind of experiences where we can talk to users also from different cultures. In this case was a project for Dole, where the target audience is in different parts of Africa and Southeast Asia. And so here it was more about trying to be more in contact with these kind of communities and trying to understand their needs when it comes to access to nutrition and access to food. And then product development, as I said, a lot of recipe development. And there is this example that I would like to mention, which also touches on a trend that I'm going to explain afterwards. But it's all focused basically on upcycling. Upcycling is a huge trend right now. A lot of people are talking about it. And in this case, basically with AB InBev, biggest beer company in the world, European, we developed an ingredient which is coming from the pulp, which is the leftover of the brewery process, so the spent grain. And out of it, we basically started developing a ton of products, from pasta to bakery products to snacks. Combining them with different kind of manufacturers to actually use these upcycled ingredients and increase CPG products impact metrics using the ingredient. We usually test products a lot. I don't know if anybody has experience doing that, but before launching, we usually put products in restaurants in a fake way. Like, we don't say it's a prototype. Everybody thinks it's a very well-polished product, but actually is not. And we gather information and feedback on them. And so you can see here, these are like new concepts of coffee to test across Italy. These are like new concepts of pasta, plant-based field pasta. So this was like a partnership between two big organizations that I can't really tell the name of, but basically we put it on like very high-end restaurants in New York for St. Valentine's Day, and basically catching attention and trying to get some feedback out of it. And then, of course, helping launching products, we helped Beyond getting to Europe. So we had the exclusive for the launch of Beyond for the first year. And other, of course, alternative. Hera is a very interesting product as well that I recommend to taste. It's a Spanish plant-based meat, especially their chicken is very good. And then also, of course, communication. So how do you communicate ingredients and sustainable products without scaring out people? I'm going to talk more about this topic, which I think it's extremely interesting because it talks across the board. Whatever you do in the food industry, you have to face someone, usually the consumers or your B2B client. And you need to explain that what you do is awesome, but is also something appealing and competitive on a business perspective. How do you do that with language? And this is something that the industry is very interested in on, specifically food service industry. So Sodexo, Compass, and all like big food service companies are very interested in that. But also B2B companies are actually, and also nonprofits. Like, we've been doing a bunch of work with WWF on that as well. So this was like very fast, but I really wanted to go to the meat of my presentation today, talking about what we discovered and some of the trends that I'm more passionate about. I didn't mention them all. I have a couple that they're not here, but I'm happy to talk a little bit more. And as I said, please interrupt me if you have any question or comments. The first one is upcycling. I already mentioned that upcycling is extremely interesting. Last year, the first Food Upcycling Association was born as a huge signal that there is something in this space which is happening. The industry is expected to grow a lot, has been growing a lot, and consumers are expressing a lot of interest in the upcycled ingredients and upcycled products in general. We did a ton of work also on a consumer-centric perspective, and here you can see some of the feedback when people ask how they shop for sustainability. The main outcomes that come out are, I want to see how the price is built up. I want to see numbers. The number concept is coming up a lot. I want to quantify the CO2 impact of what I'm eating. If I'm shopping for sustainability, I want to see how this is produced, transported, and sold. So there is a lot of transparency shown through numbers and tangible elements. I want to scan. I'm scanning to the ingredients. I want to find something locally produced, not necessarily by a smaller farmer or a smaller company, but anyway, something local. And again, numbers are coming up. And so if we look at upcycling as a trend in this sustainable shopping space, we can see many companies which are taking different approaches. One is telling a story with local, in this case, ugly pickle company. Basically, they take pickles which are ugly and usually discarded by supermarkets, and they build the whole storytelling around it. They're doing great, and it's just storytelling. The sweet potato puffs, same thing. They're just ugly potatoes, but they're basically chips. But the whole storytelling is around how they rescue this kind of ingredients. Avocado leaf tea, interesting because they're taking value out of a product a part of a product that is usually discarded. And so it's very interesting and is getting some traction as well. Other brands, Pulp Pantry, they make chips out of the pulp of fruit and vegetables they take from juice companies. Banana is a huge brand, is becoming very big. Basically rescue bananas. So much is doing the same with fruit and vegetables. And then we have Evergreen, which is the company we're working with that I was mentioning before, basically rescuing barley pulp. So there is a lot here. There is a lot also storytelling and marketing, not necessarily every single, I believe every single product is making a huge impact, honestly. But if you look at numbers, it's interesting how consumers are interested in that. The industry is going to that. A bunch of big companies are actually adopting upcycled ingredients or buying upcycle focused companies to add them in their portfolio. So it's something that in the industry is definitely happening, and I think is set up to grow more and more and take more space. The second one is climate beneficial foods. Again, if you talk to consumers, it seems that they really care about the environment, they really care about climate. If you go online and you look at just the sentence, what can I do about climate change? There is a huge increase. We talk about climate stress, climate and anxiety. There are many research around it, but for sure in the past couple of years, especially, there was a lot of interest from consumers into climate change. Given many things that happened, first of all, the climate strikes that started happening a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. What is the food industry doing? Many things, as always, I don't think enough, but many things. I just wanted to show this piece of data because we did this research and I found this extremely interesting. It came out that more people are in contact with nature, and more they actually care about the food they eat, especially sustainable food, which seems very obvious, but also we didn't talk about that as much when designing products still. And so what we're seeing is that the motivation for climate smart eating is highly influenced by someone's connection to nature, and their likelihood, their purchase intent basically on organic ingredients, on plant-based ingredients increase drastically when those people are, for example, moving outside of the city or having a little garden or having some plants. And so here you can see, especially Gen Z as a generation, sharing some of these thoughts. Like, I started growing food, and this basically made a huge impact on how my view has shifted, especially on fruit and vegetables. Now I have more plants at home as a result of COVID. And so I love to put hands in the dirt, and this is affecting also the way I'm shopping and I'm gonna shop. And so there is a desire, especially from new generation as a result of COVID, to connect with nature. And this might be an opportunity area for driving sustainable food choices with very targeted marketing and message. And this is another important part of this trend. I'm going to explain that more also with more data. But what we are seeing is that when we mention these climate beneficial foods and sustainable eating, it's very important not to create the in-group out-group dynamic. In-group out-group dynamic, you might be aware of it, but it's basically when you say something that is making someone feel, oh my God, this is my tribe, and someone else feel, I don't have anything to do with this. And this is happening a lot with vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free. So all these like closed groups that were, they became stronger and stronger in the past 10 years. That we are realizing now also how much they're basically discarding a part of consumers that we need because we want to sell to them, but also because we need their behaviors to shift. And so here was interesting because we did a test where the same kind of product was once described as vegetarian, while the other one I think was described as I don't remember. I think it was like plant-based or plant-based friendly or something like that. And so the vegetarian actually took out a lot of people that were not recognized, and they were not recognizing themselves as vegetarian per se. Some existing brands which are very much playing into this sustainable space, climate beneficial space. Here you can see a brand which is focusing on organic seaweed from regenerative ocean farms in the US. The second one is Eat the Change. It's becoming big. The founder is the same of Honesty that sold to Coca-Cola 10 years ago, a little bit less. And now they're doing a bunch of products all based on mushrooms. And then Moonshot, which is a company founded by the former founder of Zumi Pizza. Maybe you heard of it. It was Silicon Valley, it was the robot making pizza. They got a lot of money, I think from SoftBank. And then she got out and she started doing this series of snacks, which are getting a ton of traction, all on carbon neutral ingredients. And so it's interesting to see how many companies are actually focusing on these carbon neutral, carbon positive ingredients, regenerative agriculture, regenerative ingredients, and so on. Number three, that very obvious, given COVID, you know that food delivery was just like booming last year and year, mainly due to COVID. Numbers are crazy. A bunch of companies went public as a result of it. And a bunch of companies actually also expanded their business into doing more, for example, grocery delivery for a lot of companies that were doing restaurant deliveries only before. But also we found a lot of other companies that came up that I find interesting and I'm hopeful about. They are mainly focusing on reducing emissions. And so you can see Delivered Zero, based out of New York City. They basically do everything with reusable packaging. And so they are the ones shipping things around and delivering things around, but also always recollecting the packaging. Zero is something doing the same. They basically deliver without packaging, and so you need to bring your own packaging there. And so they serve you milk or they serve you other things within your own packaging, or you use their packaging and you return it. And Dashmart is just an extension of DoorDash, which is focused not just on restaurants, as I said, but also on grocery. So there was like an extension of the food delivery industry in many ways and in many directions. And I found this very interesting. I didn't mention this presentation, but I want to mention it here. The grocery around trend was also something very big that started coming up last year. So how grocery and restaurants are actually mashing up more and more. And so grocery stores started selling also prepared food, and restaurants started also selling groceries with delivery in order to, for them, leverage logistic and monetize logistic costs even more. And capabilities even more, and from the consumer perspective, to have a more integrated service, which of course it's always asked for, especially during times where we are spending more time at home, working from home. Trend number 4, about meal kits. If you're about food and food innovation in any ways, you know that last year everybody was talking about meal kits. A ton of money went into this. The key question is always, will this stay? When we talk about meal kits, these are like some of the data points. With the stay-home orders last year, and with also work from home policies from companies, a lot of consumers, more than 50%, reported that they're cooking at home more. This doesn't mean that everybody loves to cook or everybody is able to cook well as they would like. And so there was like, at the very beginning, a 7% increase of the share of population using meal kits. This number actually went up throughout 2020 and the beginning of 2021. And so you can see a lot of companies that actually got a lot of money out of this to push on meal kits delivery. You can see here some of the numbers in terms of like the market growth and how this is expected to grow. The US especially was very much impacted by that. And a lot of companies were like winners short term of it. I mentioned here 3, HelloFresh, they decided to focus on the carbon neutrality. And so basically their main value proposition in order to get out of the crowd, to stand out of the crowd, was all around the fact that they are climate neutral. While Marley Spoon, Home Chef, and a bunch of other new concepts were more focusing on the chefs and the deliciousness of the recipes and the wide variety of recipes they were selling. Now, I don't know if you ever use that. In the US are very popular. They usually comes from like $8 to $12 per meal, which is less than a restaurant, is more than if you cook at home. It depends what you cook. But again, there are a lot of customer frustrations that we found, which is the reason why I think this trend is not here to stay. First of all, they're very expensive. They're found to be very expensive. The portions are actually too small for family. 41% of people we interviewed said that. And also, it's a hassle to manage subscription, which is something that I personally didn't find, but a lot of people are talking about these maintenance costs, hidden costs that are as part of the service. And so I think this is an example of something that has been growing. I personally don't believe it's going to grow as much in the future, but of course I don't have, I can't predict the future, so I don't know how this will go. And this is number 5, which I find extremely interesting, which is the globalization of trend of ingredients. You can see how many. So first of all, this I think is a graphic that explains many things. 100 years ago, we were using almost 500 types of lettuce, or more than 400 types of pea, more than 300 types of squash, more than 400 types of tomatoes. And if you go now and look at it now, 100 years later, we see these numbers being extremely lower. If we talk about peas, just 25. If we talk about lettuce, just 36, just 17 types of beets. So it's incredible how actually our diet got very, very much narrowed down, and we are basically eating always the same things without focusing as much as other alternatives and possibilities. What I found interesting is that a lot of companies, big and small, are actually taking this challenge close to their heart, and they're trying to do something about it. Unilever launched a campaign a couple of years ago, which are pushing a lot in terms of a lot of activities they're doing, which is called the Future 50 Foods, done in partnership between the brand Knorr, which is part of Unilever, and WWF. What they're doing is basically they selected 50 foods that they call Future 50 Foods, which basically went through an assessment and are considered very beneficial for the environment. And so now they're trying to develop more products based on those kind of foods. These are divided into categories. Some of the categories are cacti, algae, mushrooms, seeds, nuts. We have some, of course, forgotten grains that we usually don't use. The report is downloadable for free on their website, and then of course, like they're developing products themselves and with startups based out of these ingredients. But I think it's very fascinating to see how such a big company is actually investing a lot of money into finding new ingredients to focus on. Smaller companies trying to do the same. Here are just 3 examples that I like. Don Bugito is a company based in San Francisco. They make snacks out of bags in all form. A lot of companies are trying to grind down insects so you can see them. You can pretend you're not eating them, but you're feeling better because of your proteins. This is a Mexican founder. She just doesn't care. She's like, you need to make up with it. Everybody in other cultures like South America or Southeast Asia is actually eating insects. And so she's keeping everything in the old form for you to literally look at your bag while you're into your mouth. Pickly, interesting company. They're making drinks out of cactus water. So there are a bunch of articles you can see in the press that came up in the past year that are talking about cactus water possibly be the new coconut water. And so that's, I think is very fascinating. And then this is a brand, there are tons of brands which are trying to actually insert their snacks, especially bakery snacks, new ingredients. And so we talk about nopales, we talk about chipotle, we talk about quinoa, which already became pretty popular. And to conclude this part, I want to go back on communication. As I said, I'm doing a bunch of work, probably I didn't mention it, but a bunch of work with this 501c3 nonprofit organization based out of Chicago, Food for Climate League, where we focus just on communication. The key pillars of what we do are control, community, and purpose. So we received a big chunk of money from Google 2.5 years ago to actually study how communication is affecting or can affect behavior change in sustainable eating and healthy eating. And everything we developed is actually centered on these 3 pillars. So the point is, when you need to communicate whatever concept that you want to sell to someone, which is so intimate as food, because you need to actually put it physically into your body, is not an iPhone. There are 3 aspects that you always need to keep in mind: control, community, and purpose. People, everybody, all of us are looking for control. We're all control freak in some extent. We want to know what we're eating, what we're doing. We want to know what's next, what the impact of what's next on us. We want to protect our family. We want to control our environment as much as we can. And so if a communication strategy is aware of it, actually it can be more effective in just acknowledging that you need some information in a very clear way, and I'm going to give it to you so you can feel in control. The second one is community. We are social animals. We love the feeling of belonging. And so it's very important when communicating everything related to food to actually tackle this somehow, to make you feel part of something, never to make you feel that you're not part of something, to give this sense of belonging in a bigger group that is welcoming you. And the third one is purpose. Again, we more and more, I think, especially with sustainability in the food space, but it could be applied in many ways and in many contexts. We are looking for something bigger. That could be your impact on climate change. It could be because you're dreaming that you're going to Mars. it could be many ways, but you're looking to be part of something bigger. And so this dream and this purposeful dream is also something that is very effective in communication. So with these 3 pillars in mind, there are also a few other things that we learned throughout our research that we do with Google and then with a bunch of other partners, corporate partners. One is the difference between Gen Z and boomers. We found Gen Z being very much interested in simplicity, ingredient-centric explanation, given information for them to decide, while on boomers, this focus on the past worked a lot. So if you say that this is something traditional, this is something that is time tested, has been like this for 30 years, usually for a boomer, this increases the purchase intent, while for a Gen Zer actually doesn't change anything. Like a Gen Zer doesn't care if it has been like this for 30 years because they're rebellious, they want to do something different. So it's actually something, it could be something negative that has been done the same way for such a long time. An interesting point that came up on communication on Gen Z was that Gen Z wants to make up their own mind. So to see if they're making that, like they're saying, I'm not interested in what the brand is saying about itself. I'm interested in coming up with my own perception based on all these sorts of sources. So never say to a Gen Zer what to do, but just inform and give the opportunity to make some choices and decisions. Another interesting finding around communication on Gen Z is, of course, that pictures are very much more effective on Gen Zers than on other generations. They grew up with Instagram and TikTok. And so also on a menu, but like on a menu, on advertising, on any kind of promotion for any food related item, when you have a cool picture, actually this is worth more than 100 words for a Gen Zer, and this is not necessarily valid for other generations. This is what I was saying before around the in-group and out-group concept. It's something that I personally found very interesting because in the past 10 years, we have always been focused on, okay, we have the gluten-free population, the vegan, the vegetarian, the keto, there are like all these communities. It seems that they're effective, but also there are limits to it. And I think I didn't crack the code yet, but it's very interesting as a topic of like, where are the boundaries and where should we put the boundaries? Which means that if you're targeting someone explicitly for vegans, you can have great supporters in their niche, but you're basically sure that you are not going to be interesting for anybody else which doesn't recognize himself or herself as vegan. And just because of, for what I was saying before, in terms of belonging, you just think that this product is not for you. If this product is vegan and I don't recognize myself as vegan, I just feel that I don't belong to the crowd and I am not interested in that. And so I think this can, for the next 10, 15 years, sign a change in the way we speak about products. The key question that I still don't have an answer to is like, how do we find this halfway, this middle ground where actually you don't forget about those groups that are very much an identifier for a lot of people, but at the same time, you start your targets a little bit more as a company. And these are like some of the best practices that we found throughout this communication work. I basically mentioned a lot of that, or a lot of them already. Speak to human truths, building on current trends. We spoke about democratizing already, highlighting the positive, which is another very interesting point. Coming from 10 years of free from. This is free from gluten, this is free from nuts, this is free from sugar, and seeing how much actually the negative focus can decrease purchasing intent. When plant-based products, which are on the rise right now, and a lot of plant-based companies are trying to appeal to consumers, it seems that it's more successful for Beyond or Impossible Burger to actually be positioned as meat with all these properties more than non-meat. Because if it's a non-meat, the whole focus and then all narrative is actually on the negative side. And we're seeing how much purchase intent can actually be affected negatively by this focus of free from something. And then what else? All the rest, I think I mentioned it. The only one I would say is also depoliticized. There is, I mean, I think the vaccine topic in the United States also showed us if you politicize something, you're going to have big supporters, but also a lot of people that don't want to take this product. And this is also coming out with sustainable food, specifically, that it's important for a brand not to talk too much about the politics around climate change and so on, because you basically, again, you're going to create in-group, out-group, and you're going to keep a lot of people out of the conversation, and so missing a lot of customers. That's basically it. I should say, I don't have in this presentation 2 trends that I think are relevant. I mentioned plant-based food. We can talk about this a lot if you want, even if I think it's already at a different stage, because we have been talking about it for a long time. And packaging, a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. I see the industry didn't find great solutions yet. There are a couple of companies that I'm a big fan of, but apart from that, nothing is honestly exciting me yet. While working on CPG, I see this as like the first #1 problem that the food industry has, because we can improve our recipes and our content and our farming practices. But if we keep on having packaging, selling those products in packaging that is going to stay on our planet forever, I don't really know how much positive impact we're really making with all these activities. So yeah, that's basically it. I hope this is enough food for thought for you to ask questions and engage in a conversation.